emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. The last few weeks I've been trying to pivot to do a few different things, but as you know, when I try to go live with my homeboy from the penitentiary, I couldn't figure out how to do the camera, right? So it's back to the drawing board. But I'm getting towards the end of my, prison sentence. I've been taking you guys through the course of my bid, starting out from the county jail to Lompoc and all the different places that I've been. Well, once I wrap this up, I just want to start sharing you guys different stories about the people I met along the way. I met some, formidable individuals, some people that were intelligent and highly dangerous. And one of the dudes that I want to share with you today was Kamal. Kamal, at the time that I met him, he was a BGF, Black Guerrilla Family. When I got to Lompoc, I was put in M Block. And M Block was a unique block, meaning that it was a lot of people with high security levels there. There was a lot of dangerous individuals there. They had all the black hands in there. They had Topo, Black Bob, Gato, Beto, Ruben. They were all over there in M Block. But not just for them, but they had the leaders of different gangs in there too. And one of the dudes that I got real close with was Mike Wilson from the Black Guerrilla Family. Me and him used to work out every morning, for the first 6 months or something until our schedule changed up. But Kamal was there in that block with me. And through the course of the time, I guess I can say I was really fortunate that I was put in that block. I was a youngster coming off the streets. I spent about 3 years in the county jail fighting my case before I got sent to the pen. But when I got there, compared to everybody else in the block, I'm a kid. And these are old veterans. A lot of them been down 15, 10, 20, 30 years and more. And they've seen a lot of things. And I was fortunate enough that they took a liking to me. Now, when these old heads took a liking to me, it was almost a stamp on my character. Well, not almost. It was a stamp on my character because their homeboys around them see that, man, my big homie or so-and-so is fucking with this dude, so he must be a good dude. And it allowed me to be able to move around the penitentiary and through the course of my bid seamlessly. I was able to get into every avenue. I was able to break through all the barriers as far as the racial lines between the blacks, the whites, the Mexicans, and the rest of it, So through the course of my 20-something years incarcerated, I was able to make friends, become friends, and are still friends with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And that helped shape who I am. People out here, they go to college to learn a higher education. I didn't get a chance to go to college because of the choices that I made, but I believe that I received, a higher level of education while I was in the penitentiary. Even though I'm out there on the yard doing what I do, gambling, participating in different type of trades and just doing my time, by no means was the limitation to it, I spent a lot of time having conversations with smarter people than me. Dudes that survived the penitentiaries, but they survived the penitentiary not on the sheer force of their physical ability, but because of their intellect. And I was schooled and I was introduced to a lot of different literatures, a lot of different books that I will mention in other episodes that these people study. These dudes that run gangs, they know what it takes to be in a position of power. When you're in a position of power, you're really the lone man on the totem pole. Your underlings, some of them are loyal to you, but some of them are envious and jealous and are always looking for ways and reasons to, chop you down. So when you're up there in that position, you have to be on top of your game. And on top of your game isn't necessarily like being the baddest dude, as far as your physical ability. Yeah, you can beat everybody up, but I've seen, but being a tough dude don't mean a damn thing, because when it comes to war, there's always ways to even out the odds. You know what I mean? So for you to stay in a position of leadership, you have to be above the rest. And that starts with your mind first. You have to be an intellectual. You have to know the politics, know the rules. It's just like anybody else in any position. When you're a politician or a CEO of a company, there has to be skills that you have that sets you apart from the rest. Because I'm not going to follow somebody that's dumber than me. I'm not going to follow somebody that's weaker than me. I'm not going to follow somebody that has less heart than me. And I'm not going to follow somebody that doesn't believe and have the same conviction that I do. So most leaders that you run into, they're what we call fanatics, true believers, because they've done everything that they've done through the course of their time because they really bought into the organization, the structure. And they're the ones that's pushing the line, holding the line, and enforcing the rules and laws. And for you to do that, you have to be an exceptional individual. So I was fortunate enough while I was in Lompoc to be embraced by these individuals and educated by them. I've talked to, made men of different gangs. I have my age group that I go and play basketball with and go to the yard and kick it with and chop it up with. But I spent a lot of time in a cell talking to these old heads, And one of the men that I learned stuff from was this guy named Kamal. Now, through the course of our time getting to know each other, I discovered that he was a former blood. He used to be a blood. He showed me pictures of him at another spot where they were all in red sweaters with their red rags out. And I'm like, damn, they let you wear your colors and stuff? And he explained to me that for a period in time while they were in that spot, like they started selling blue sweatshirts and red sweatshirts and rags and stuff in commissary. And all these dudes, all the gangbangers and shit, they went and got their colors. They started wearing their colors, got their color rag. Latin Kings got their yellow sweaters on, with the yellow rag. The Crips got their blue sweaters on with the blue rags. The Bloods got their, red sweaters on with their red rags. Same thing with the GDs and the Vice Lords, because, the GDs are blue, the Vice Lords are red. And they all go out there and they start taking pictures in their group, all their affiliate homies and stuff like that. Well, after about a couple months of that, the commissary came, the SIS came and took all those color items out, and it turned out that the population in that penitentiary got tricked because, the SIS's job is to know everything about everybody on the compound. That includes staff members, that includes the administrations, the COs, and of course, all the inmates. When they come in, they got your case, but sometime on your case, it doesn't say that you're affiliated with any type of gang because, you already know when you go to court, being a gang member puts you in a different category as far as like if I was just some civilian, like for a better term, went and robbed a bank, I might have not got as scrutinized and I might not have got garnered the attention that I got for being a gang member. Because I'm a gang member now, they look at me as a domestic terrorist, as a disruption, a menace to society, as opposed to a drug addict that went and robbed a bank, to support his habits. So a lot of people that get locked up, they start talking about, And, you know, there's no issues about people saying, oh, I'm not a gang member, or I don't belong to any gang when it comes to the court, because, you know, you're trying to put yourself in a different level of scrutiny. So a lot of people deny their affiliation when they're going through the process, when they're going through the court process. But that's not meaning saying they're being a buster or anything. That's just saying they're trying to get the best advantage they could possibly can outside of telling, you know. So when they come in, some of the paperwork doesn't tell you that you're affiliated with a gang or that you belong to this type of group. So sometimes you're able to slip through the crack as far as the SIS is concerned. You know, SIS is Special Investigation Service. They're like the Internal Affairs. They're the police on the compound. They're the ones that refer your cases to the FBI when you get caught up inside the wall. So at this time, I guess there wasn't a lot of records of all the people that was affiliated with different gangs and so forth. So they came up with the idea of allowing colored sweaters and rags being sold out of commissary. Because if you notice, all the penitentiary prisoners pictures, their colors are real bland. It's just gray sweaters, you know, different degrees of gray, white, you know, colors, neutral colors, I guess you could say. So when they came up with this plan, you know, us dummies, they're dummies. They were like, oh, ooh, you know, ooh, this a red sweater. Ooh, it's a blue sweater. They went and put that shit on and started taking flicks. And when they did that, the SIS was able to categorize everybody, put them in their respective groups and gangs and all that stuff. And once they were finished doing that, they came and took all that shit out of commissary. And he was explaining this to me because, you know, when he was young, like I said, he was blood. And we're not really using our mind. We're always constantly at war. And war means it doesn't necessarily have to do with guns and firearms and grenades or anything like that. But there's a mental war. There's a war of intellect. You know, now the world that you live in, we are at war. We're at war with the consciousness of the community, of how the government wants to implement how we think, wants to really indoctrinate us with certain things that we know in our hearts that we don't agree with. But because we see it on TV all the time, over and over again, we start to accept things that we know are against our natural nature. And it's called psychological warfare. And psychological warfare never ends. It's a continuation. It's constant. It's an environment every single day. You know, for people that are into the politics and the stuff that's going on in our community right now, if you take a step back, you can look that we are engaging in a very intense psychological warfare. But that's not, you know, what I'm here to speak on. I'm speaking on this man that I met, Kamal, that used to be a blood. So when he tell me he used to be a blood, you know, my thought is like, man, why would you know, I didn't voice it out loud. The dude's like, he's 6'6", dude's a monster. On the penitentiary in Lompoc, if you name 10 of the most feared inmates in a penitentiary, I guarantee you he's one of them. You know, he's respected by everybody. And usually, you know, when you meet somebody that used to be a former gang member, that used to be a part of one gang, but it now belongs to another gang, their former community would always talk shit about them. Oh, he's a busted man. He used to be one of us, blah, blah, blah. But in Lompoc, there was no whisper about Kamal using to be former blood or anything like that. And the way he explained it to me was that, yeah, I used to be a blood, but now I'm a BGF. And, you know, I dedicated my life to this code, to this life. And I came across something that opened up my eyes. Because, you know, the BGF, they're more political than anything. They study history. I've been in a room where we study Che Guevara, Mao Tse-tung, Art of War, Machiavelli the Prince, 48 Laws of Power. And, you know, he gravitated toward that more intellectual, educational empowerment. And by no means was he ever a buster or anything like that. So he decided to evolve himself. When you know you're doing something, when you've been doing something and you know you might think it's correct, you might think it's the best way to do something, but when somebody comes that shows you a better way, if you're a person that's trying to better yourself, trying to evolve, you're going to accept that. You're not going to just stay stubborn and be stuck in your ways, even though it's not producing the result that you want. Right now, if somebody comes over here and starts showing me how to do a better YouTube channel, how to do, how to get more clicks and baits and whatever the rest of it, I'm all for it. I'm trying to evolve. I'm trying to better myself. So I'm not ever in a position to think that I know everything. In fact, I know very little. And acknowledging that you don't know everything gives you room to grow. They always use that term, whatever. It says, if your cup is full, there's no more room to add more water. So my cup is always empty, and I'm always willing to fill it up with different knowledges and the rest of it that helps me grow to be a better person. So going back to Kamal, he explained his evolution, and like he was a formidable individual in Lompoc. I shared with you back in one of the episodes that he used to work out with this dude from Detroit, and they're both like 6'6". And Kamal, every time you see him, he's on the yard getting it in. He's working out all day long. And, you never see him running around you don't see him gambling. You don't see him getting high. He was a real serious individual. And we happened, after they kicked us out of M Block, we happened to be in the same block, in K Block. And while we were there, they had an incident where a Native American had stole something from the Rastafarian. And the BGF, the religion is Rastafarian. They educate themselves and they study Swahili. It's mandatory for their members to learn Swahili. And the reason is that not only that they believe that is their, their culture, that it was their birth, their language of their race, but also to be able to speak it when you're around people so that you can communicate without other people understanding what you're saying. When I tell you that the penitentiary is a war zone, that's what it is. And right now I'm taking you into the mentality of the people who's on that compound. We treat it as such. We are behind enemy lines. It's everybody's duty, everybody's job that are affiliated or gang members to know everybody around them. When somebody comes off the bus, they have a designated dude that does the background on this individual. Oh, he came over here from Beaumont. Oh, he came over here from Florence. He ran with this, he ran with that. Every gang has a list, has a category, has made a book on everybody else in their unit. The simple reason is that when the time does come to war, they know who they're hitting. They know this guy has an alliance with this guy has an alliance with that guy. Because, when you have beef or when there's a confrontation, you want to be able to just hit your target and all of your targets and not the wrong target. Because if you accidentally hit the wrong target, that eventually brings in another group of people that you didn't account for while you were going to war with this other individual. So in the penitentiary, between the groups and the gang is real militant, meaning they have, their structure is like the military. You have your general, your lieutenants, your captains, your sergeants, and your soldiers. They have different names for each of them, depending on which gang and which group, but it's all structured the same way. You have your captain of arms. This guy is a guy that is in charge of the security of the group, meaning he helps provide the artillery. And, he's always like, when you have an issue, you go to him first because he's in charge of the security. And and his job is to keep the community safe. For us as an Asian and Islander, we didn't have like the structure like that because we weren't a gang. But part of my job was that. My job was to ensure the safety of my community. So in essence, I took upon a lot of the responsibilities to make sure that we had the right things that we needed to be successful in the penitentiary and the things that we needed to do. So when I'm kicking it with Kamal, we would go through different scenarios. And at first, I thought it was just, we just kicking it, chopping it up. But eventually I learned that he was really educating me, opening up my mind. Because, when I first went there, I really didn't think about like what I would do if I crashed with this individual or if I crashed with this group. I've always relied on operating on an instinctive level. Like if something happens, I'm always ready to go. And I was thinking, in my thinking was not up to par with them, because waiting to act on instinct, even though you got heart, it could set you up for failure. You have to be more tactical with everything. And through the course of the time that I knew him, we played these scenario games. Like, what if this happened here? What if the situation gets over here? And automatically over the course of the time, my mind started operating and working the way his did. When people came off the bus, through my different avenues, I inquire about who these individuals are, who they're affiliated with. I started looking through my unit and start categorizing everybody. Oh, he's a Sereno. He's from this gang. He's from that gang. He runs with this dude. He runs with that dude. And it was just a game that me and him constantly played while we was in K Block. And one of the reasons, and going back to saying if you were to put 10 dudes that were most feared on that compound, Kamal was in that category, along with a few others that I'm not mentioning here just yet. But like I said, one of the incidents was a native dude had stole something from the Rastafarian, and the BGF, Mike, the dude that had the yard for the BGF, he told me about it. He's like, yeah, we got to go handle some shit. This dude over here, is in violation. And they approached the Native Americans and told them, hey, man, this dude did this. It needs to be handled, but we're going to handle it. Usually you allow their people to handle their own situation, to deal with the fuck up. But Mike wanted to make an example. He didn't want to leave it up to the natives. Maybe they just might, through the course of my bid, the natives get it in. The natives, when they go punish their homies for whatever violation, they punish them and they get it in. But sometimes they just beat them up. And sometimes they stab them. And sometimes they kill them. So it's always different degrees. You don't know what you're going to get, because depending on where it happens, when it happens, and how much time they have to handle the business. But Mike didn't want to leave anything to chance. So he went and told him, like, look, we understand that, protocol, calls for us asking you to handle the business, but we want to handle this because he violated a sacred setting. They stole something from a religious place. Like, if you know people that believe in their religion, that's sacred to them. That's something that they're willing to die, give up their life, give up their freedom for. Whether you're in the penitentiary or out here on the streets, there are individuals who, hold their religion as their first and utmost importance. So the native dude that he spoke to, that spoke for the native, understood where he was coming from. Because, if somebody came and stole something from, their sweat lodge or the things they have that are religious items, they want to be the ones to handle that business too. So they say, yeah, go ahead. They gave the green light. And I think I mentioned in the story, every morning when you go to, when they do supplies, You can, once a week you can go get razors. But every day there you walk down to this corridor to the laundry room and you pick up razors or laundry or whatever. Every morning there's something to go down there to pick up or whatever that you got going. Like I never really go down there unless I went and brought like a pair of sweats that got ripped and I needed somebody to sew it because they had a sewing machine over there or something. Or if my homie's like, hey, come pick up some because, they're still out of the laundry room and they might have a pack of, white tees or something for me to smuggle back to the block. But usually I just go to breakfast, come back and wait for yard. Well, on this particular morning, I think we're going to pick up soap and razor. And Mike and them had already told me about the demonstration that's going to get put down. And I don't know who's going to go on this mission or nothing like that. I just know that there's an issue between the BGF and not necessarily with the Native Americans, but with a particular Native American. And this dude is a Native American and he's got homies that's, in his native car. But when it comes to things like this, their homies not allowed because, they know that they acknowledge that this dude violated something that can't be talked about, can't be rectified through words, that this dude has to be held accountable. And the way that they're holding him accountable is they're going to punish him. Even though he's got homies that care about him or whatever, they cannot intervene. Because now when they intervene, they have to be willing to when they intervene, they're saying, fuck it, we're going to back this dude's play, whether he's right or wrong, and we're all going to crash. They have to decide if they're going to put their lives on the line to protect this dude that violated somebody's sacred religion. And for the most part, you got homies that's going to ride with you, it's going to have your back. But when you fuck up and you do something that everybody acknowledges that is wrong, they're not going to be so quick to defend you because, one, you put them in danger by doing that goofy ass shit, right? So even though the other natives knew that it was going to happen, nobody said anything to them because in a penitentiary, there's no secrets. These dudes are intelligent. These dudes that are in a position of authority are in position to make calls and stuff. They know how to investigate. They know how to draw out information from people. And if somebody would have hipped this native dude to what was coming, it would have got found out. And his action would then involve the whole car. Even though it was just some one individual going to tell his buddy that he cared about that, hey, man, watch your back. The BGF is about to make a move on you. They're going to hold the whole community responsible. And I'm not saying that, who's going to win or lose, who's stronger, who's more dangerous or more fierce. I only make a point that it's going to involve everybody and it's going to get bloody. Because at that point, the respect level is going to be out the window because we have protocols that we abide by. And when you deviate with that, the people with the grievance, they're not going to allow that. They can't allow that because if they allow that, then they're going to lose respect from everybody else. And the penitentiary respect is the first and foremost thing that matters. If you don't have respect from the peers around you, you're going to have a hard time in the penitentiary. And the only way you gain respect is how you deal with situations. There's situations that people can understand that you can verbally resolve it. But there's certain things that once the line is crossed, that nobody within our community that thinks the way we think that are going to give you a pass if you don't deal it in the way that we expect you to deal with it. If somebody steals from you, there is no way that you can go back to the dude and say, hey, man, please don't steal from me again. If you do that, then everybody's going to steal from you. Everybody's going to take your shit. If somebody comes into your cell and removes something out of your cell without your permission, the only thing that is acceptable in our community is for you to butcher him. Period. When it comes to that particular issue, there's no gray lines and there's no exception. If you make an exception for it, I guarantee you will have a very hard time in the penitentiary. But if you go and handle your business, in the way that people expect you to, the way that you feel you should do, then you're going to get the respect that you need. But you're not just doing it out of respect. You're doing it because that's what you don't, because you shouldn't allow anybody to violate you in that aspect, period. And if somebody does, you should feel like you want to bust this dude's brains, you know? So the scenario was that the dude stole something from the Rastafarian. Well, I didn't see the incident, you know, but on this particular morning, I went to the laundry to pick up something, whether it was a bag of laundry or I don't think it was soap and razor, because I don't really need anything from the from the laundry when it pertains to that. But I'm walking up to the laundry room, and dudes were telling me, "Hey man, watch out for the puddle. Watch out for the puddle." You know, the puddle is what it is. It's a puddle of blood. There's a blind spot, and everybody always seems to get hit in that corner. There's a blind spot going to laundry because you know, before I went to the penitentiary, there wasn't a lot of cameras. But a few years before I got to the penitentiary, they started putting cameras up on every corner of the penitentiary because there was a lot of people that was getting away with murder. And they thought that, well, if you're under the camera, that it might, you know, help stop and prevent some of the violence, which it didn't. Because when people feel like they have to do something when an issue comes up that it has to be handled in some way, they're not trying to get away with it. They're just handling the business. So, but in this particular hallway, there's a blind spot. And a lot of times, at least once a week, there's a puddle. And on this particular day, there was a puddle. And everybody's like, "Hey man, watch out for the puddle." Because, you know, it's a corner, but to go into the laundry room, you got to go through this corridor, this little walkway. And sometimes the puddle out of the corner, if the dude has been, you know, butchered and leaking and whatever, his blood is going to run, and some of it is going to cross into your path. And everybody, and one thing about Long Pop, homie, that when I first got there, they really, like, everything I heard about, you know, convict code, man time, it was enforced over there. Like, nobody went and told the CO that there's a body laying in the corner or any of that. Or when there's, the whole yard knows that these two cars are about to crash, nobody's dropping a kite to the SIS. You know, everybody handled their business, you know. So I went over there and I stepped over the puddle. I don't know what the incident is. You know what I mean? I didn't even know that it was Kamal and the Detroit dude that had hit that dude that morning, because, like I said, on any given morning, at least once a week, there's always a body in that corner. And I just go get my stuff and I come back. And only later, you know, I find out through, you know, people in there, and, you know, Mike shared with me, he's like, yeah, it's like, you know, when I come back, you know, Kamal was not in my block, you know, so like I said, I didn't know who was being sent on that mission or anything like that. So through the course of the next day or so, I'm like, hey man, what happened to the homie? And I was informed that he was sent on that mission. Him and the Detroit, they were recruiting a dude from Detroit, light-skinned brother from Detroit. You know, him and Kamal were about the same size. And like, you know, they were, you know, Kamal was really dark, where the Detroit dude was light. But everything else in their demeanors, you know, they were like the Dubman twins. Like, everybody started recognizing them as a pair, you know, that they were the homies, that they were always with each other. And he was a prospect for the BGF, and Kamal had the responsibility to educate him and bring him along. And he went on the mission with Kamal. And they punished this dude. Like, the body wasn't recognizable. He had to have, I think, if I'm accurate, 5 reconstruction surgery to his face. The limbs on his body were broke. I don't even know how he survived it. But this dude was a pope. You know, the people that seen it, you know, me, I just seen a body crumbled up, and I stepped over the blood. But the people that was there, the people that seen it, you know, like through the course of the next few days or whatever, that seen it, they said, there's different degrees of violence. And this was a beatdown that a lot of people were like, I don't want to say traumatized over, but they were just like, man, they fucked dude up. And it came back because, Kamal was in the shoe almost a year, and when he came back out, he shared with me, the write-up and the paperwork, and it said in there, there was bones in his body that was broke. He had to have 5 reconstructive surgery for his face. It was just a bloody mess. And, and part of the reason that, if, like I said, if top 10 people most feared in the penitentiary, in Lompoc in particular, that his name would come up, is not just his physical presence and his, ability to exert punishment and violence, but the dude's a very educated, intelligent individual. And while he lived in K Block with me, he was really part of my, schooling. We always find time, and he would come with me with like, here, I want you to read this. And, when he gave me something to read, I love to read. I not so much when I was younger because I wasn't good at it, but being locked up, being in a cell and being forced to read to really occupy your time and take you away from the cell, I started enjoying it. And everything he handed to me, I consumed. And I consumed mainly, I consumed part in because of my curiosity. And the other part was to show the homie respect. Because, if he gave me something to ask me to read it and he comes back a week later and it's still sitting on my locker, that's really showing him like, I'm really not interested in the things you're trying to educate me on. And my intention when I went into the penitentiary was to survive it. And people that had the knowledge and the ability to help me navigate through this landfill, I was soaking it up. And none of the efforts, none of the energies that the older heads invested in me went to waste. I was like a sponge. And, through them, that's why I say, I was educated in the penitentiary. Because of them, I'm grateful that these old heads took a liking to me, because through them, it allowed me to become the person that I am today and the person that I'm still striving. So really, this podcast is just to pay homage to all the old heads that, took a time to invest in me. And I appreciate that. Welcome to the USP.